Hello, it's a couple of days before Samhain on Salt Spring Island, and I wanted to share with you some Path of She teachings for this sacred time of year. And I've taken you to someplace very special, and this is called a nursing tree. And it's a wonderful place in nature to connect with the deep mysteries of nature on Samhain. Now, Samhain is halfway between fall and winter. It's really a turning Sabbat, a turning special day when the seasons are shifting out of fall and beginning to turn toward winter. And what we see at Samhain when we look at nature around us, and also when we look at our cultural traditions, is that Samhain is a time of death. It's very green where I live because fall and Samhain this time of year brings rains, and so some of the evergreen is very, very green. But the deciduous trees are now losing their leaves. Very soon we'll come to the time when they're winter bare, when there'll be no more leaves on the trees. And it's very cold and damp, and life is slowing down. Nature is slowing down. And it really is a time when nature is turning fully toward death, fully toward the powers of death. The darkness the powers of darkness are deepening. The days are shorter, the days are colder, and the land, the plants, the animals all start to turn into their winter mode, which is dormancy, stillness, and death. Now, in our human lives, in our human traditions, this is also the time of the last harvest. So in our agrarian past, in our ancestors, this is the time when they would have been looking to the land, harvesting the last of the food, and they too would have been turning toward winter and scarcity. And we see that in the traditions that have continued into the present. So for example, this time of year is the Day of the Dead in Mexico, and it is All Hallows Eve in European traditions. And in my Wiccan tradition, this is also a time when we make a journey, a trance journey to the land of the dead to connect with our ancestors. And how we understand that from a pagan or a Wiccan tradition is Samhain is the time when the veil is thin between the worlds. And when the veil is thin between the worlds, the dead and the mysterious ones can rise up and directly commune with us humans. So Samhain, in all of these ways, is a season and time of death. Now, in the Path of She, what we look at is, yes, we know all of these traditions, and yes, we know what's happening in nature, but what does this mean to us personally? Like, what are the soul lessons that this season offers us? And it's very much a season when death looks us straight in the eye, when death looks us straight, and we can really look inside and see what our relationship is to death. And the goddess that, in the Path of She, that we work with at Samhain is Hecate. Now, Hecate comes to us from Greek mythology, but she's actually much, much older than that. And how I understand and work with Hecate is that she's been with humanity right from the very, very beginning. She is like the all-mother, or the goddess that has watched over us, and she is the dark goddess that guides us in the ways of mortality, of embodiment, and of death and decay and suffering and sorrow. She's a goddess that understands the deep magic of death, of the deep magic of wounding and suffering. And also she understands the opposite of that, which is the deep magic of love and beauty and the blossoming of humanity, the blossoming of each of us in the face of these challenges of being human, this challenge of being in a mortal coil, of being made of flesh, and knowing that we die and everything around us, everybody that we love, will come to death and decay and suffering. It's part of our human condition. So Samhain is a time to turn inward and really look at these challenges of being human, the challenge of being an infinite soul in a mortal body. And Hecate, when we work with Hecate, one of the things she asks us to do is come to her crossroads. And her crossroads, the way I work with it, the way on the path of she we work with it, at Samhain, it's the crossroads of life and death, and the crossroads of love and fear. And what she teaches us at this time is that death is really an illusion. And suffering is also just a piece of being humanity, of being human, a piece of being human. And that we need to become big enough to actually hold both of those paths, hold the path of life and hold the path of death, hold the path of love and hold the path of fear, and become big enough. Her middle path, her third path, is to become big enough to hold all of that. And now that's an idea or a concept or something you can work with spiritually. But in nature, in this very location, this place that I've taken you to, those principles or those ideas are alive and blossoming around me. And what I have here, what I'm standing in front of here, this is called a nursing tree. And what this would have been when this big, beautiful tree was alive, it would have been a gorgeous, huge, it would have been either a cedar or it would have been one of the coniferous trees around here, cedar or a fir tree. And back in the 40s, this land was logged. And so this is the remnant of that log. So you can look at this tree and you can see death. And you can see the loss of what was a magnificent, magnificent being. And we can go to that place and we can be in sorrow and we can be in loss and we can let that overcome us. Or we can look at how nature shows up to death. Because in this tree is actually, the death is an illusion. Because what this tree has become, it has actually become the nutrients and the base of new life. And that's why it's called a nursing tree. If you look closely, there's a cedar tree growing out of this. And its roots go into this tree. Its nutrition comes from this tree. And this nursing tree, this tree that is, by all apparent, observations, it's dead. It's actually living through this tree here, which goes down and roots into the ground. And if you come into this side, this is, if I look at it, look at the branches, this is a fir tree. And you can see how big this tree is. And if you look at it closely, its roots, these are its roots. There's its roots right there. And so its roots are going to go down through this base and down into the soil. So this old growth tree, this grandmother tree, is actually connected to life. It is actually part of life. The nutrients that were in this tree feeds these other trees. Its base becomes the container for this life to grow. And in all these things, we see that death is an illusion, that life and death are co-joined, that they breathe and live together. And there's great beauty in that. There's great, that this is to me the energy of love. And love from a Pathashi perspective, or how Hecate teaches me about love is the power that holds, contains, creates, and nurtures life. And so this grandmother tree, when it died, actually became this wonderful vessel of love, this wonderful vessel of life that new growth could rise from. And you see that it's not just that. There's the salal growing out of this, and all of the leaves and the debris from the forest. It becomes soil. If you look, this is actually nice, rich soil that's made up of everything that has fallen and turned to decay. And though you can't see it, when I was looking at this earlier, there's this, you're not going to see it because it's so small, there's this little snail or slug that is nestled into this decaying wood, and as it turns to death, it turns to death at the time of Samhain, it too, its flesh will become part of this soil. Its flesh will become part of what feeds these trees. And so as a mortal, as a human being, that in this stage of my life is facing death, is facing the loss of my parents, is facing the loss of people around me, is facing my own mortality. I can come here and I can be taught about death. I can turn to the season of Samhain and realize that death is really a piece of, yes, it's a piece of being alive. Yes, with every breath that I take, one day will be my last. Yes, these things are true. But I too am part of the great cycle of life. You are the part of the great cycle of life. Everything around us is part of the great cycle of life. And it's more than just what happens to our bodies. So when my body dies, it will become part of the earth. My energy will return to wherever it returns to. And we focus on that with death, but that's actually not what's important. What's important is what we do when we're alive. Because our legacy in our feeding life as human beings is not just our physical body. It's actually what we do and create, and the love that we give, and the relationships that we create, and the beauty that we create in the world, and the goodness we give to the world. And so the deepest calling at Samhain is actually a calling on Hecate's path of love versus fear, is to choose love. Is to look death in the face, look our mortality in the face, and realize that our days are precious, our moments are precious. And what do we do with that precious gift? What we do to that precious gift is we give love. We be love. We be beauty. We be ourselves, and we give the most that we have to give to this life. And then that remains when we're gone. That remains in the impact we've had on everybody around us. It impacts the children that we may have, or the children that we can, or the people that we can influence in our life. It remains in the things that we created of beauty, be they art or writing or dance. All of those things are our legacy. All of those things are part of our nursing tree, part of the nutrients that we give back to life. And so these are messy, painful ideas. Samhain is a very edgy Sabbath. We think of Halloween, and because Samhain is also Halloween in our mundane, our everyday world, and we dress up as ghosts, and we trick or treat, and we do all of those things. And so that's like the play side of it. But underneath are these deep, serious, mournful lessons. And so in the path of She, I invite you, Hecate invites you, to look death in the eye, to look at how you show up to endings in your life, to suffering in your life, to loss in your life. And how do you show up? Do you show up in fear, or do you show up with love? Do you come big enough to hold it all? Do you understand and accept the fact that you too are a nursing tree, and that when you pass on, and when you die, and when you leave, whatever you leave behind will be something that feeds life, that life grows from, that life continues from. So if these teachings speak to you, and you'd like to go deeper into the Path of She Samhain teachings, you could buy my book. It's called The Path of She Book of Sabbats. And in this book, you'll find more of the teachings that I've been sharing here today, as well as a guided meditation and some exercises to take you deeper into the soul lessons at Samhain at this powerful time of year. So my love to you, and blessings on whoever you choose to celebrate and honor this powerful season of Samhain, this powerful Sabbath of Samhain.